Hey, welcome to the Wildscast. I just had an amazing conversation with Betty Gulko, who is a psychologist. She's a therapist who's worked with teens on self-esteem. She's worked with autistic children. But what she's figured out, and I think really can be very helpful with, is how to deal with anxiety and depression, which is really a major issue in our society today. She also got an amazing following on Instagram. So we discussed at length how to navigate some of the self-esteem, I'm not good enough issues that come out of getting sucked into people's Instagram feeds and the like. What is the best way to help a friend who's going through a difficult time? And how can we take adversity? This woman has gone through real adversity and she's figured out a way of using it for the betterment of her own development and the people around her. Take a listen, and if you like the Wildscast, then please subscribe. Okay, welcome to the Wildscast. We have Betty Gulko, who is an amazing therapist who's worked with autistic children. She mentors teens on self-esteem. She's got an unbelievable blog, suchabetty.com. She's a fashion stylist and consultant. Thank you so much for coming on the Wildcast, Betty.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to meet you and be a part of this incredible cause. I love everything you share already, so I'm excited to chat with you.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. You do amazing work helping young women find resilience and confidence to overcoming their challenges in life. Um, there's a beautiful teaching, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha," very famous, to love your neighbor as yourself from the Torah, implying that you're supposed to love and help yourself before you can do that for others. Was that something that came easy to you? Are you able to help others because you have that sense of self?
Yes, of course. Listen, there's such a concept as being aware of who you are, knowing where you came from, and how you maneuver through each day. So I think that a lot of times people tend to think they know it all and they want to just give and give, and that's beautiful. But until you've really gone through yourself, you know, deep dived into who you are and kind of what makes you tick, and taking it all the way back, you really can't be present for another person. For myself, it took a long journey to get to where I am today, and I'm still working on that journey. Growing up in Memphis, Tennessee was certainly a very challenging life, to say the least. And all of those things maneuver myself to where I am today. And I had to take a step back and think, okay, who am I? What is Betty? Who is she? What is she going to become? What does she want to give to the world? And that's taken a lot of different spots throughout my life, but
Mhm.
we'll dive into that.
Well, so let's dive into that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you share with us a little? You have a bit of an unusual childhood, bouncing from foster home to foster home. I mean, how what was that like, and how has that built you into the person you've become?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was not easy to say the least. I am the oldest of two younger siblings, and I really took on the role of a mother, a caretaker right away at a very young age, to the point where I was kind of dealing with the household chores and dealing with everything going on between school and homework and whatever that might be. And stability is a big component to one's upbringing, and that was something that was lacking, in addition to other challenging things such as abuse and financial difficulties and moving in and out of different homes, like you mentioned. So it was not a place where any young child can really take a step and enjoy and just have that freedom to explore. So it was a place where I didn't even fully comprehend many of these things until I was older and until I developed and I decided, how am I going to use this for good? How am I going to shift my mindset and create and build a career and a life and a home? And now I'm a mom and I am a wife, and it's I'm not perfect, and there's still things. And I think it's fascinating that people expect each one of ourselves to be perfect. And no matter what type of life you grew up with, good and or bad or challenging, you have an opportunity to choose how am I going to interpret this and what am I going to make and how am I going to
Right.
dissect how is that affecting me and how can I move forward?
That's such a fundamental Jewish teaching. You said that so beautifully, because we're not in control of the deck of cards that we're dealt. The only thing, Rabbi Soloveitchik taught this, one of the great rabbis and luminaries of the 20th century, that we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose, and you just said it, how we interpret it, how we assimilate those experiences into who we become. I'm curious, just to go back to your childhood a little, was having to take care of two younger siblings at such a young age. Was there anything positive about that? I often wonder whether or not our kids today are not given some kind of responsibility and whether they're robbed of that. Like in Israel, at the age of 18, they got to serve, whether they like it or not. At age 18 here in the United States, people go off to party on college campus. Was there anything
Right.
positive about that?
That's such an interesting perspective. Listen, there's always good and bad with everything, and it's kind of what level of the good and bad is it, and how does that affect you? Because we found studies, right, where you could find twins in a home and they're separated and they have two totally different experiences growing up. And we're curious, we want to dissect that. How do they react and behave moving forward in their lives? So for that, yes, of course, there was definitely positivity, which means that I was able to be mature and understand kind of life challenges and already have an idea of where and what it takes to accomplish. Determination, resiliency, like you mentioned earlier, is a factor that's just a part of me. Now, is it nature versus nurture? We could dissect that. I don't know. But there is a piece to me that is just a go-getter, a hustler. I know what I want, I make it happen. Um, and yeah, that is some part of me that's just from Hashem, that Hashem gave me this strength. But I think also because of my upbringing, having to be very responsible at a young age, it put me in a position to handle things.
Right.
And I think that sometimes, like you mentioned, children or young teens, as they're growing up and developing, they kind of just don't have that wherewithal to just handle even the simplest of things. And it might not be their fault, but it's kind of very fascinating that in a time like now where we have so much available and it's beautiful and we can, grow and look, we're connecting like this so simply and easily. I would have never had an opportunity to meet you if it wasn't for technology. But unfortunately, it leaves the children at such a disadvantage where they're stuck not knowing how to help themselves
Yeah.
naturally.
What do you think? What would you tell parents? I mean, most of the people listening to this, it will come to MJE are 20s and 30s, but like, what would you tell parents or even someone already fully formed, what they could do? They call this the snowflake generation, that we've protected our children. Everybody gets a trophy. There's no losers. Um, and it doesn't develop the kind of resilience or self-esteem, interestingly, because as a parent, I will tell you, I'm such a wuss. I had the hardest time when my kids were younger saying no. And I wanted to cushion them. One of my kids wanted to do this and he couldn't get into this program, and you want to pull strings for them. And if the parents don't hold back and the kids don't have those experiences, how are they supposed to develop, as you said, resilience? Because you have a lot of that.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know if there's anything in particular. And do you think that's one of the root causes for all the self-esteem issues that we see in our generation?
Gosh, I mean, whoo, you know how to go right for the good parts. I don't think there's ever any one particular point to any topic. I think that it's really dependent on so many circumstances. Um, However, as a parent, I'm also a
Hmm.
parent, and I understand what you're saying. We just want our children to be loved, happy, safe, exploring and learning and growing. But if you think about it, right, when your child is learning how to ride a bike, we want to ride alongside them and stand right next to them and hold the gear for them and make sure they don't fall. We don't want them to fall and get damaged. But fascinatingly enough, the moment when they do fall is the moment that they actually they actually realize, oh,
Right.
this is what you mean by balance. This is what you mean by riding the bike. I understand now. So sometimes we kind of have to let our children fall within obviously reason in order to understand and grow and let their mind kind of in their own way, in their own level, learn and understand how to accomplish and
Yeah.
maneuver through failure. Because let's be real, life is going to give you lots of quote unquote failures and challenges that we as parents can't control. And in my mind, at least for parenting, it's the one of the goals is to provide them with the tools necessary to accomplish adulthood.
Adulthood. Let's talk now to an adult, to someone who's already, 25, 35-year-old young Jewish professional living in the city, and they've had some sort of difficult, experience in their childhood. It could have been a trauma. It could just been an ongoing, I don't know, parents were divorced at a young age, or even when they were adolescents, and that caused an issue. You're someone who successfully took challenges in your childhood and used them to help other people. What would you tell such a person, let's say, who was traumatized on some level by their parents' divorce or some other difficult type of situation in their life, maybe social anxiety, maybe bullying, whatever it is, they were the victim of something. What would you tell that person that could help them actually grow, at this stage in life? Happened 10, 15 years ago, maybe.
100%. And unfortunately, in life, we are going to all go through something that we may feel is a trauma. And trauma is a kind of a key word right now, but it really just means something that's really affected us on such a level that it's hard to move forward. It's hard to maneuver in whatever capacity that trauma stems from. So, first and foremost, what I always really emphasize and focus in is talking about that trauma, talking about that moment. What is your memory? Feeling and knowing how your body is responding. How does it make you feel? Using vocabulary of understanding and talking it out of the feelings. What is your body motion and movements doing when you experience, a memory of this moment? And how does it carry on in your day-to-day life? Are you able to maneuver with the relationships? Are you able to, hold a job, etc.? And we really just break down the different steps of how it occurred, what's the consequence, how are you reacting day to day, and then we maneuver to the next step. So it's not just a one quick fix, and it's a lifelong journey, like I even said for myself. But you have to go through stages, and you have to be willing and ready to first and foremost accept whatever it was that happened. Accept it. I'm not saying be happy about it. I'm not saying think that it's okay, but accept this is what happened, and let's now figure out how we can move forward.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. So it's like this, the most basic thing is to be aware of it, talk about it, accept it as part of your reality, and then little by little, you're saying you can eventually, it could help build you. What's that terrible expression? What won't kill you will, I don't know,
Make you
make you
stronger.
stronger. I would never say that to someone while they're going through the
Exactly.
experience themselves, but let's go back to something we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Anxiety and depression have soared, a lot of different groups, amongst specifically adolescent girls since the 2010s. John Haidt attributes this phenomena to the rise of social media. Now, I don't know if you agree with that, you don't agree with that. You're in an interesting position because you're someone who helps young women with their self-esteem, adolescents, and at the same time, you're a social media influencer with tens of thousands of followers. So how do you balance that? And tell us how this affects how you post also.
Deep breaths. Deep breaths. Lots and lots of deep breaths. I actually personally agree. I agree. And it's just like I mentioned before, with everything positive and with growth and development in the world, there's going to be some sort of consequence and negatives
But you
because I
agree, I'm
definitely,
sorry, Betty, you agree that social media is one of the causes for a lot of the anxiety and depression that adolescent girls, I mean, it's boys too.
yes,
Mhm.
I do. And I wouldn't necessarily say specifically only social media, if you would, but any of the, online
Yeah.
things, whether that be TV and on all the things. So I think that it's okay. Children and adolescents and young adults are very fragile. I am already a grown woman, but I'm still fragile because we are so easily influenced by what we hear, by what we see, and by who we're surrounding with. So, social media is such a popular and easy thing that we can always 24/7 be have access to. With that being said, you cannot expect anyone to have zero, and you have to understand how it is affecting you. The problem is most people don't, or they're in denial, or they think, oh, well, I'm just on for 15 minutes a day, or they say, I'm just following such and such person. But by nature, humans are judgmental, humans are jealous, humans are not developed in themselves and prepared to be able to handle the outside influences. And this could go for magazines too. This is
Mhm.
what I'm saying. It's not only social media,
Right.
it's anything that we read and do and talk about. So with now, we have an opportunity to choose very, very delicately how and when and what we're posting and talking about. And I have had a whole slew of ups and downs with this,
Mhm.
for myself, because I feel that as an influencer, if you want to call it that space, the usual go-to is sharing and talking about what you have,
Mhm.
what you're doing. And that's fine. I understand that. But it comes with a cost. It comes with the cost of pressure to have and be doing
Mhm.
24/7.
And to be
It
showing it
comes
and to be displaying it for the world. Mhm.
exactly. And it's a lot of pressure from the other side. What I'm watching and what I'm seeing makes me feel I need and want and should have, when all we have to focus on is being grateful and have gratitude. But how could we be grateful and have gratitude when we're watching what everyone has and thinking we need it? So, like you asked about balance, I can't give an answer for anyone about anything because each individual is different. But there are so many tricks and tools and things that you could do. For one, for yourself, right?
Mhm.
You try to implement and post Torah, learning, positivity, growth. And I have shifted into that focus
I
as
see
well.
that. I
So,
see that. Mhm. And I no, I applaud you for that because it's tempting, to get more likes. We all know what will get more likes. And you have to kind of like balance that because, there's this pressure for anyone. I'm on a much smaller level. But anybody wants to get more likes and, you know, but so that's from the poster perspective. That's like maybe from our perspective. What about the kid or the 25-year-old, I don't know, person who's getting sucked into their Instagram feed at 2 in the morning and they're just wasting time and it's depressing them. It's not just a waste of time. They're just like by the time they put the phone down because they're so tired, they're blurry eyed from watching all this nonsense. They're just upset. They're sad and they go to sleep upset. Um,
oh,
what
yeah, it's an addiction for sure. And I think that what I would say is first and foremost, like I mentioned earlier, is being self-aware.
Mhm.
If you're feeling like this, so I would say, for example, it's 11 o'clock at night, and here I am. I found myself scrolling uncontrollably. My eyes, like you said, are blurry. I don't even have any self awareness that I'm doing it, which is an addiction. I'm just without any mind doing it. so let's say the next day I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling very depressed today. I'm feeling very down, groggy. I have no energy. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not enough.
Hmm.
I'm not good
Yeah.
enough. Who am I? What was mine? So, what I would suggest is you to take out a journal, take out a notebook, write it down. Start notating when you feel this way, what's the feeling, and what happened prior.
Hmm.
So if you wake up and the moment you wake up, I don't know, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and you're already feeling like this, you're going to notate this for a week and you're going to start to see the pattern. What's the pattern? Maybe it's my scrolling at night and you need to change that. So we need to build new habits. For example, no scrolling, no social media past 8 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Period.
Hmm.
The end.
Hmm.
And start to rebuild your habit in your mind. Read a book, listen to a podcast, have relaxing music, something else that's going to put you in a position of self awareness. We are walking like robots. Nobody has any clue who and what they're doing. And that's what I would start off with.
That's
But
amazing. I love what you just said. Put it down and start to journal or read a book. Listen, I'm just reiterating what you said because I want our listeners to hear this. I think this is really important to be aware of what's happening and to break the cycle by doing something different and realistic things, listening to a podcast. Podcasts are they're incredible. There's so many besides this one. So, there's so much information and inspiration and positivity and substance and content out there today, like never before, and books like that's amazing. I was going to add something also, if you don't mind.
yeah, of
I
course.
saw a very disturbing, ugh, I have to find it. It was a documentary. I don't know if it was about Facebook or Instagram in particular, but it was really getting into the mindset of some of the people, very smart people who are designing these feeds and what goes into the feeds and what gets sent to your, on your feed. Um,
Right.
and it's very much, I think if we're aware that there was some thought, it didn't just randomly appear on my feed, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but that this was part of a concerted effort to get me sucked in so that someone can advertise a product because that's how money is made. And
Exactly.
yeah, I just think if we're aware of that this didn't happen haphazardly, this was an intentional, and I'm not saying the people behind this are evil for doing this, but I think if the person scrolling around knows that somebody is trying to suck them in and this is what does it, I think that's incredibly helpful. And what do you find is the best approach or the worst approach to when trying to help someone who's going through a rough spell in their life? Let's say they just got dumped, they lost their job, something circumstantially doesn't go right in their life. What's the best approach?
Yeah, I love that question, because even as myself, we all need companionship and we all need friendships and we all need positive relationships, whether that be a neighbor, a friend, an old friend, an in law, anybody. And sometimes we're just at a loss. We don't know what to say, what to do. Maybe it's awkward. But what I found is so helpful is just letting that person know you are there. You are there, period. You don't need to tell them what to do, when to do, give them directions, tell them how they should be doing it. It's just saying, I'm here for you.
Beautiful.
I'm here for you when you're ready. And check in, daily check ins. How's your day going? What are you up to today? I think it's the connection that people are missing. And I could attribute that back to the social media topic as well. Um, but when you're in a moment of despair, worry, sadness, you feel so alone. You feel it literally feels like it's this craziest thing in the entire world, and you're the only person, and no one else could possibly understand you. And while that might be true in some, parts to that, overall it's not. And we can all sort of relate in some sort of way. And when you reach out to the person, you say, I'm here for you. Call me. I'm going to call you tomorrow. You want to go on a walk. That makes them feel like, oh, okay, maybe my life isn't that bad. And it may take time, but that person has to be ready to open up and to
Hmm.
share. So when they're there and they're ready, they know they can count on you.
Beautiful. Hey, by the way, the very famous verse, 3 words, Imo Anochi Bitsara. I am with you in your distress. And for problem solvers like me, sometimes it's very challenging for me to keep my mouth shut and to just literally be there to hold the person's hand and to say nothing. Just, I'm here. The person's not looking necessarily for a solution. They're looking for a friend. I just, it's such a fundamental Jewish teaching.
It's beautiful. And something that came to mind also is what I like to say. I make it very clear. I say, would you like me to just listen or
Mm,
would you like some
mm.
feedback? Because first of all, sometimes again they're just speaking, they don't even realize, maybe they're just venting, and then it gets them to think, oh, you know what do I really need actually? And it opens up the door for them to also have a little bit more self-awareness.
Yeah, you said something else, which is, I think, a fundamental um, sort of psychological condition when we go through difficult moments in our lives. We feel alone, like no one can understand what I'm going through. And it's one of the reasons why when we visit, let's say, a mourner who, God forbid, has lost one of the 7 close relatives. So, what does Jewish tradition prescribe? What do we say? There's this one line. We say, "Hamakom minachem etzchem," that God should comfort you, because we believe the ultimate comfort comes from God. B'toch sha'ar avilei Tzion v'Yerushalayim, amongst all the other mourners of Zion in Jerusalem. And I always wondered, like, okay, the temple destruction, and we're all mourning for Jerusalem. What does that have to do with this guy who just lost his parent, God forbid, or a sibling? Because what you're doing is you're putting that person, and you're saying to that person, I know you feel alone, but we all are mourning something, and we are, and I feel your pain because it's very hard to feel someone else is feeling your pain when you don't think they've gone through it.
Right.
But if you can say, listen, I have some sense of what you're going through. There was a story actually of I'm going to blank on the rabbi's name, but he lost a son in the who fought for the IDF. His son was killed in one of the operations, and he had a very, very difficult time until another rabbi, rabbinic colleague of his, this is many, many years ago, who had lost a child in the Shoah, in the Holocaust, came to visit him. And he said, until you came, I didn't feel a sense of comfort because nobody else here has been through this. To lose a child, you can't even, and I think what we're trying to do is make the other person feel like we're feeling a little of their pain. And maybe also going back to what we said before, that's maybe one way of using a trauma that we've experienced. Like after my mother passed away many years ago, when I pay a Shiva call, I feel since her passing that I've been able to be much more helpful to other people who are going through it. And I can communicate that a little.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really a huge part of our growth. What do I mean is sometimes we're still stuck on being upset or being angry or having resentment towards something that happened. But once you feel like, again, back to acceptance, you could still be sad. And it's very important to be sad, of course, but the acceptance of it, then you can utilize that, like you said, for good, to have empathy, to really put yourself in that feeling and emotion that other person might be having at that exact time. And that's the beauty of relationships and developing and showing and sharing when it's appropriate what you've gone through. So that way people can look to you in a much deeper way. It's not always about fluff and the pictures and the this and the that, because at the end of the day, we just want to connect. We want to feel like we're heard. and we want to feel like we have an opportunity just like everybody else. And something that I want to add to that point is, for me myself, Betty, I really did not believe at all. I did not understand and think at all, zero, that I had any opportunity, let alone all of the amazing opportunities that I've had and that I currently have, and God willing will continue to have. And it took a time in my place where I said, I want change. And that is only something that that individual can do.
Mm.
No one could tell them, no one could talk to them. It's up to them. So, with that being said, it took a lot of work, and I pushed forward and I did what I had to do. I fundraised, I made sure to have a job. I was always working and, taking extra courses. I wanted to always learn. I had a thirst for Judaism. It was so important for me to hold on to my Judaism and my religion. And that, we could just say maybe that was just Menashemayim, but and I went to Israel for 2 years and I studied, and I decided, I said, I want to take on more things because I feel that there's a spiritual yearning. So,
Okay, let's stay on that for a minute, if that's okay. I'm so curious
yes.
about how did you come to become observant, despite, the background, the difficult childhood and all that. How did that happen?
Yeah. So, throughout my upbringing, like we mentioned before, it was a very difficult place to be. And I was in and out of different foster homes and foster care until at one point I came more into the Jewish community in Memphis, Tennessee. And I went to the Jewish day
Hmm.
school. So at that point, I was around Jewish life. I was surrounded by Jewish education. So, of course, that is a huge component to me kind of having this
Sure.
awareness. Um, so, I don't know how to describe it. I really don't know. It was just something inside me that was always like, I knew I wanted to marry a Jewish man. I knew I wanted a Jewish life. What did that mean? I had no idea. But even if I wasn't keeping all of the rules, and I'm not perfect now either, but I still felt that this was the direction that I
Hmm.
wanted to go in. And with that being said, that was when and how I raised money to go to Israel, because that was the
For
only way it was
yourself,
going to
raise money
happen.
so you
Yes.
yourself could. Wow, love that.
Yes. There was no other way. Me staying in Memphis after high school and
And
doing
this is how
whatever
old?
was not
How
going to
old are
work.
you at the time?
I was, I guess, probably
Hmm.
17.
And where
Yeah.
did you know where you wanted to study at that age? I mean, that's pretty. I mean,
I
most,
just
my daughter is 18 and she's going off, please God, to Israel next year, but she's been on that trajectory her whole life. This is something that you chose yourself, right? So, I mean, did you have friends going off to seminary or?
Yeah, a lot of girls were
Mhm,
going and a lot of guys were going to yeshiva, but I mean, of course, I had guidance, and the principal at the time, she was very involved. Everyone was very involved in my
mhm.
life, so for good and bad. So they kind of had some voice in that, and I really just picked a school that I felt was closest to kind of my style, which was a very modern,
Mhm.
Orthodox. It's Machon Gold.
Sure.
They're
Oh my
closed
gosh,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was a biggie. I remember that.
Yeah, it was, I think, the first women's seminary,
Yeah.
I
How
think
long ago
so.
did that close?
Oh gosh, I'm not
It was
sure.
it
Maybe
was
10
very
years ago.
popular. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just chose that cuz I felt like it was kind of closest to my
Hmm.
style, if you would. So I spent a year there, and then I felt that really honestly that year was my first time away. Like fully and completely away. Like, you can't call me. You can't find me and tell me about whatever's going on. So it took me a very long time to adjust and then to begin kind of this learning process. So I chose to go back to Israel, to Neve Yerushalayim, for a second
Wow,
year.
beautiful. I know Neve, sure. And then what happened afterwards?
Yeah.
So you spent a year in Machon Gold and then a year in Neve, and which is kind of rare for in the women department. It's pretty par for the course for guys these days, but there are not as many women that stay on for a second year. Did you have any Israel thoughts remaining there?
I love Israel. I'm obsessed with Israel. I want to go there every other month if I could. Personally, making
Mhm.
Aliyah, I'm very American, so I don't know, but I've been back many
Mhm.
times. It's a very beautiful blessing to be able to do that, and we hope to make it there for Sukkot coming up. But yeah, Israel is very special.
Tell me if there's this has all been Torah as far as I'm concerned, the whole conversation. Do you have a favorite Torah teaching that you apply to your life or share with others to help people, give people strength for resilience and pushing through obstacles?
Yeah, so something that I like to say often, and that's primarily because of everything that we've kind of shared so far, which is there is a purpose and there is a goal, and Hashem is putting you in the right place at the right time. I don't
Yeah.
know how we're gonna say that in a Hebrew, but maybe you can help me out
Well,
there.
I'll tell you, the Ramchal, Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim Lutzato, in his famous work, he was a great Kabbalist, lived in the 1700s. He wrote a book called Derech Hashem, The Way of God, and he wrote very much along what you just said, that every person's life predicament is their challenge because that's what their soul needs in order to be perfected in whatever way that it needs, and that we are placed in a certain environment, subject to certain circumstances and conditions in life, because that's what we need to get to the next place spiritually. I don't have like a cute little Hebrew phrase for it,
We'll find it. We'll
but
find it.
it's a very profound teaching because what it does is it allows us to not just see that situation as like, oh, got to get through this, what a pain, but no, that's what I need to grow.
Exactly. And I love that because that again, this only comes, guys, this only comes from change in habit and
Yeah.
awareness. I'm not perfect. Don't quote me. You see me in a bad mood, but with practice, you will get there little by little. The ability to take each moment and say, deep breath, let me think, let me focus. This moment is a challenge that I can overcome for the good because there is something that's going to happen. It might not be right away, but
Long
long
term, yeah.
away.
That's
And
very important. By the
yeah,
way,
I
that's very
just feel
important
yeah.
because I think we often view these things as just negative things we got to just get out of the way because we don't see any kind of how's this improving me? How's this making me better? How's this making me a better person, a better Jew, a better, but it's a long, you got to take the long term approach. I'll give you an example. He says, the Ramchal gives an example. He says that poor people are challenged to see if they can become satisfied with their lot. Rich
Mm,
people are challenged, he says, to see whether or not they will, God forbid, become indifferent to the plight of the poor. Every person's life predicament, he writes, is given to that individual. And that's why comparing ourselves to other people is fruitless. And it's
right.
nonsense because my soul is different than your soul. I have different needs, and I have to go through A, B, and C to get because I'm trying to get, I have different challenges than you. And therefore, I need a different set of circumstances in life than somebody else. And I just think, I think that's a very, very positive. Now, I don't necessarily recommend, and I'm sure you don't do this as a therapist, tell this to the person while they're going through the right? I mean, I think we
Right.
go back
No.
to Imo Anochi B'Tzara. I'm with you in your pain. I'm here, and I love the way you said that
Mhm.
before. Ask the person, hey, do you want some constructive, feedback,
Right.
or do you just want me to be here and listen? I thought that was very helpful what
Yes.
you said. So I think, yeah,
Yes. And
please.
yeah, no, I love it. I think that it's only until after we've kind of gotten past a certain moment do we say, "Oh, do you remember when that happened and this was in the middle and that was at the end and now here?" And it's kind of this funny thing, but if we just remember that other story, that other moment, how it turned out. Now, by the way, this doesn't always mean that it's meant to be perfect and good and rainbows. It means sometimes the ending is not so nice, but that's what we define from that not so nice ending, right? And how are we going to use it to change our lives? But by the way, I have so much to say. The comparison thing is so hard because I know that I have my journey and you have your journey and so and so has theirs. But when we are looking at the external, and that goes back to kind of getting caught up in that whole
Yeah,
world,
to have
it's
what we have and displaying what we have. So what do we do? I
it's hard.
I just feel like it's and you use the term, I'm not enough. I feel like that I've experienced this myself,
Yeah,
and I talk to my students about this, mostly 20s, 30s, just feeling just not good enough about themselves to ultimately accomplish their goals because they're spending so much time looking at everybody else, what they have, what they do.
exactly.
I don't know. I would love, I don't know if you,
Exactly.
it sounds like a joke, but wouldn't it be great if we could
No.
have like a failure posting site where all we did was post all the bad? Nobody would do it because it's just,
No, I have an idea. I have an idea. Are
yeah.
you ready? We could start it. We could start a whole campaign where we hashtag what I failed at this week. But the point isn't to bash
Hmm.
ourselves, right? We're going to make it clear. The point is to share and showcase that this is not only my highlight reel. This is also reality in life. So we could start a whole new
I,
campaign. I love
I
that.
have to tell you something. I think it would be so refreshing. First of all, the idea that we're only growing through wonderful things that are happening is nonsense. And because the real
Right.
growth, unfortunately, comes through, no pain, no gain. We know
Yes.
that in the gym. We know that on
Mm-hmm.
the physical level. We don't build muscle unless we tear tissue. But it would just also, I think, make people feel better when they every time they go on, they're not just seeing some other success from other people. It just, I used to call it fake book, not Facebook, because it's not real. I know I would do that. I would love that. You have to be careful. You don't want to you don't want to bury yourself, by
Oh, listen, you'll figure it out. We'll figure out all the details, but I think that the idea is wonderful, and I do think that there was a trend at one point where it was kind of like sharing and showcasing their bad days or their skin without any makeup on, things like that. Um, but it's very hard. You want to look your best, you want to feel your best and showcase yourself the best. You're certainly not going to go to an interview looking like you look when you're in your pajamas at
right.
home, right? So it's a fine line, but the idea is there. We'll fine tune it later.
I would be very,
Not
I
face tune.
would definitely be open to that, and I think it would take on. I don't know what would you
Yeah,
call it? What
yeah.
would you call it? Just like having a bad day. Like, I mean,
I'll think of a
yeah,
good one.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you.
Nope. No, it could be called no bad
No bad
days
days. Oh,
without challenges or something.
just failure.com. I don't know what it is.
I don't know if I'd gravitate towards that, but we'll figure it out.
Just invite all the
Yeah.
losers. I'm just kidding. But we
Yeah,
all,
yeah. No.
that's part of the human condition. I want to thank you, Betty, for coming on. This was so
Yeah.
great. This was such a great conversation. Anybody interested in getting more inspiration and positivity from Betty Gulko? Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Gulko. Okay.
Perfect.
So she's got an amazing blog called suchabetty.com, and you can follow her on Instagram, and keep doing the great work you're doing, because you're in your own very unique way, you're really spreading a lot of what I believe to be a fundamental Torah message, of feeling good enough about ourselves to make a difference in the world and be connected to the higher part of ourselves as well. We didn't even get into that, but I think having that perspective that you're giving over really enables us to do that.
Yes, thank you so much. I do want to just make a little
Oh,
correction
please.
if I may.
What did I mess up? Tell me.
No, my website is my name,
Oh, I didn't
bettygulko.com.
have that.
It's
I'll have to
okay.
fire
It's
somebody.
okay. And
Okay,
it's okay.
BETTYGULKO
Dot
.com.
com.
So it's
Yes.
BettyGelko.com. And what's the name of the blog?
So it's my
Hmm.
name on Instagram, my name, Betty
Okay.
Gulko, and I have my podcast as well as Chat with
Chat
Betty.
with Betty. Okay, cool.
Yes. My Such a Betty was my first kind of onset into this space, which was my editorial fashion business. So it's still up and running, but that's not my
Yeah, we
focus
got an
anymore.
old
So
bio.
yeah, I was like, wait. I want to just touch upon
Yeah.
one
Oh,
last
please.
thing, if
Yeah.
I may. I know we're getting close up to time here, but um, something that you mentioned right just now, which is the fact that we have like our low self-esteem and we just feel like we're not good enough. And something that I find is so beautiful is when we are focusing on ourself, not in a selfish, greedy, superficial way, but when we're focusing on ourself in all of the areas, working out, like you said, eating healthy, reading books, learning, talking, meeting new people, engaging in interactive, healthy topics, all around wellness, that is when we can handle other obstacles like being jealous or whatnot or having the comparison. And
Hmm.
you will not be able to accomplish fully. And I know you mentioned briefly, like in terms of our soul, but getting to your soul, getting there without this first step, because you're not going to feel right like you. And you have to be you and perfectly, beautifully you. Whether that be funky, weird nails or whether that be pajamas, it's okay. But I think people are so afraid to be themselves and not hold on to this piece of I have to be ABCD or I have to
Hmm.
do or
Hmm.
say ABCD in order to be liked or valued or followed, etc.
I appreciate that comment. That was very insightful. It's almost like people were saying during COVID to make sure that you keep your immune system, that you're eating healthily and you're working out so that if you get COVID, you'll be able to handle it a lot better. Because we can't prevent the negative circumstances of life from happening. They just, stuff happens, as they say. The question is, are
Right.
you in a state of being spiritually, emotionally, psychologically that you can handle it, you can deal with it? Because if you're in a compromised position and your immune system is compromised, then you can't fight it off. It's a great teaching and lesson.
Exactly. And what's really special is if you have someone safe that you could communicate with, and I'm sure you have many people who feel very safe and comfortable with you, the beautifulness in that dynamic is for them to be able to practice. Because the first thing is that it feels so uncomfortable to say certain things, to use our words, because we just don't do it. We don't express ourselves in a clear, helpful way. So once you change and start building these new habits, then when the real moment comes with the spouse, perhaps, right? With the sibling, perhaps, you are that much stronger
Mm-hmm.
to handle it hopefully better. So
Wow. That's, by the way, a great plug for the community, being involved in the Jewish community, MJE, because you
that's
need
right.
other people and a chevra and a community to feel supported and loved to be able to actually deal with those situations in life. That was one of the great challenges during COVID when we were sort of cut off, or our community, we were cut off from each other. We didn't have the wherewithal to deal with some of what was happening because we were alone. So many people were alone. Our population was very alone in the city, 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Not everybody's part of a family, and a lot of people
Right?
are transitioned between the families they come from and the families they're going to build one day. That population was very threatened with a lot of issues during COVID, um, and I can't emphasize enough. It's one of the things I'm most proud of at MGE is that we have that caring and loving community for people to be part of. That
It's amazing and it's so necessary no matter what, but even the more so in a trying time, like you mentioned. And I feel so passionate about your cause as well because it's even personal for me. I know that I grew up with
mhm.
NCSY and it was my
Yeah,
anchor,
yeah.
if you would. I was always on the Shabbatones and meeting and making new relationships and friendships and having this space where you felt like a family.
NCSY, by the way, is called,
So,
it stands for National Conference Synagogue Youth, and it's actually how I got started. Was I was an advisor in
oh,
NCSY, and they do amazing work. We're basically NCSY for adults.
exactly. Love it. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see you. Come to the next
Amen. You
event.
are invited. Seriously, anytime. This is just step one. And we got to get that other
Exactly.
loser.com or post your failure here or whatever it is. I think that would be awesome.
We're gonna make it happen. I'm not worried. I'm not worried. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me though. It was such an amazing conversation, and I really hope that it resonates with anyone who just is looking to kind of realize their potential and understand that even though you have hard times, or maybe you have had hard times, it doesn't mean it stops. It doesn't mean it's over. There is always new opportunities and chance for regrowth.
Amen. That was a great, perfect way to end this. Always new opportunities for regrowth. Thank you.